It was supposed to be just another school trip. 12 students boarded a yellow bus in the summer of 1988, laughing, singing, clutching packed lunches and disposable cameras. They waved goodbye to their parents, promised to be back by nightfall, and disappeared into the winding roads of the countryside. By evening, the bus never returned. By morning, search teams combed the forests and valleys, but there was no trace, no tracks, no belongings, not even the echo of voices that once filled the air. The 12 were gone. For decades, their story lingered like a ghost, whispered at dinner tables and printed in fading headlines. Parents kept their porches lit for children who never came home. Empty chairs remained at graduations and birthdays. Rumors spread, a landslide, a secret tunnel, even abduction. But without evidence, the truth was swallowed by time. Then, nearly 30 years later, a battered camera was discovered in the ruins of an abandoned cabin deep in the woods. Its casing was rusted, its strap broken, but inside the film survived. What it revealed shocked investigators and reignited a mystery that refuses to die. If this happened in your town, what would you believe? Where are you watching from? Comment your country below. And if stories like this haunt you as much as they haunt us, make sure to subscribe, because what investigators saw in that film was only the beginning. You imagine the summer of 1988, the kind of day that glows brighter in memory than it ever did in reality. The sun hung low, shimmering through the haze, as 12 students from a small-town high school climbed onto a yellow bus parked in front of their school. Their parents stood nearby, waving, some clutching cameras of their own, others holding on to the edges of worry they didn't want to admit. It was supposed to be simple, a day trip to a nature reserve just 40 miles away. A picnic, a short hike, and then home before dark. You can see their faces pressed against the bus windows, some fogging the glass as they laughed, some leaning out to shout promises. "We'll be back by dinner. Save me some cake." It was the last time anyone would hear their voices. The bus rattled away, engine groaning, the driver adjusting his cap as he took the winding mountain roads that led out of town. Behind them, the parents drifted back to their homes, unaware that their world had just shifted forever. But wait, the shocking part comes next. By dusk, when the bus still hadn't returned, the first phone calls began. Parents dialed the school, then the district, then each other. Some thought there must have been a flat tire or maybe traffic, but as the night deepened, worry thickened into something sharper. When midnight came and the road was still empty, fear turned to panic. The next morning, the town woke to the sight of emergency vehicles lined along the high school driveway. Police, state troopers, even volunteers gathered with flashlights and dogs. Search parties swept through the forests, calling out names that no one answered. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their spotlights tracing patterns across the ridges. Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet, because not even the bus could be found. Investigators followed the route the driver was supposed to take. They checked fuel stations, diners, roadside motels. Witnesses remembered seeing the bus once or twice along the highway, children waving from the windows. But somewhere along the twisting mountain road it simply vanished. No skid marks, no wreckage, no sound of brakes in the night. Just silence. Parents gathered at the school gymnasium, transformed into a command post. Maps were pinned to walls, red markers spreading outward like veins as the search widened. Some parents refused to leave, sleeping on benches, clutching photographs of their children. One mother left her porch light on every night, a beacon for a daughter who never returned. But the shocking part comes next. As weeks turned into months, rumors began to spread. Some claimed the bus must have plunged into the river, though divers found nothing but mud and logs. Others whispered about old mining tunnels that crisscrossed the mountains, shafts abandoned and forgotten, perfect for swallowing vehicles whole. More sinister voices suggested the bus was taken, by whom no one dared to say. The police with no leads called it a cold case. The families with no bodies called it a nightmare that refused to end. Still, the real story hadn't even begun. 30 years passed. The town aged, its streets changed, but the 12 students remained forever young in fading photographs. Their classmates grew older, married, had children of their own. But when reunions came, there were always 12 chairs left empty, 12 names unspoken. The pain never dulled. And then came the discovery. Deep in the forest, miles from the old route, a hiker stumbled upon the ruins of a cabin. Its roof sagged, its walls half collapsed, ivy clawing through broken windows. Inside, beneath splintered wood and rusted cans, lay a battered camera. Its casing was cracked, its strap frayed, but when investigators developed the film, they saw something no one expected. The first images were simple: students laughing on the bus, flashing peace signs, pressing their faces close together, innocent, joyful, proof they had begun the journey as planned. But the next photograph shifted. Shots of winding roads, blurred trees, the driver's hands gripping the wheel too tightly. Then, stranger still, images of a narrow dirt track, one not on any map, the bus apparently turning onto it. But the shocking part comes next. The final frames chilled investigators to the bone. The students were no longer smiling. Their faces were pale, wide-eyed, staring at something beyond the frame. The last photo, blurred and grainy, showed the inside of the bus as it descended into a tunnel, walls of stone closing in, darkness swallowing everything. The flash had illuminated terrified faces, and then nothing. When the photographs were shown to the parents, decades older now, some collapsed, others screamed. One whispered, "That's my boy's jacket." But why are they underground? Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet. The discovery reignited the case, dragging investigators back into a nightmare long thought buried. Teams returned to the forest, searching for any sign of the tunnel captured in the final frame. Old maps of the region were pulled, revealing dozens of collapsed mines, shafts sealed for safety. But none matched the path shown on film, and yet, one retired miner insisted there were tunnels never documented. Secret routes carved illegally in the 1940s, used for smuggling and then abandoned. "If that bus went down there," he muttered, "it ain't ever coming back." But the shocking part comes next, because when investigators returned to the cabin where the camera was found, they noticed something they had missed before. Scratched into the floorboards beneath layers of dust were 12 sets of initials, some carved deep, some faint as if done in haste. The letters matched the names of the missing students. The air grew heavy as they traced the carvings, realizing the children had been here, inside this cabin, long enough to leave a mark. But how did they get from the bus to this place? And who left the camera behind? The chapter closes with the detective staring at the last photograph under a magnifying glass. The blurred tunnel walls, the terrified faces, the darkness beyond. His voice trembles as he whispers, "They didn't just vanish. They were taken somewhere." And you're left asking, what road did the bus really follow, and what waited inside the tunnel that swallowed 12 children whole? You imagine the investigators hunched over the photographs, their fingers trembling as they slid each print across the table. The students' smiles in the first frames looked so ordinary, so alive. Disposable cameras were common then, cheap plastic boxes you carried on trips, snapping shots you hoped would turn out. Parents remembered buying them, slipping them into their children's backpacks with a reminder, "Take plenty of pictures." No one could have known those would become the last images of their lives. The detective in charge, now gray-haired and weary from decades of chasing other unsolved cases, stared at the tunnel shot longer than the rest. Something about it felt wrong. The walls weren't natural, they were cut, chiseled, squared. This wasn't a cave. It was man-made. But where? But wait, the shocking part comes next. Search teams returned to the forest, this time armed with ground-penetrating radar and drones. They scoured valleys, ridges, dried creek beds. The forest had grown wild in 30 years, swallowing paths, collapsing trails. Yet one thing became clear. There were gaps, hollow spaces beneath the earth where there shouldn't be. places where stone had been carved away long ago. They brought in old miners, men whose hands shook but whose memories of the mountains remained sharp. One pointed at the photographs and said softly, "That ain't no tunnel we built. Too smooth. Too narrow. Looks more like a shaft that was closed." He paused, his eyes clouding, or opened again. Still the truth hadn't surfaced yet. As word of the camera spread, the town stirred with old grief. Families who had stopped speaking to reporters now stood on porches again, clutching framed photos of children who never grew older. Journalists descended, cameras flashing, asking questions no one could answer. One mother, hair white now, whispered to the detective, "I knew they weren't gone. I still set the table for him every Christmas. I knew he'd come back." Her hand shook as she traced her son's initials carved into the cabin floor. But the shocking part comes next. Inside the cabin, beneath the dust and debris, investigators found something else. A torn scrap of fabric wedged between floorboards. When tested, the fibers matched a uniform sweater from the high school in 1988. It was proof the students had been there, not just their initials but their belongings. The question remained, how did they get from the bus into this place? Theories multiplied. Some believed the bus was diverted down a service road hidden under tree cover. Others whispered about a driver forced at gunpoint to leave the highway. But when investigators dug deeper into the driver's life, they found no signs of foul play. He had been a trusted employee for years with no debts, no enemies. And he vanished too, never seen again. Still, the real story hadn't even begun, because as the detective stared at the final photo of the tunnel, he noticed something most had missed. In the corner of the frame, faint but visible, was a shape. Metallic, riveted, curved. Not part of the bus, but something embedded in the wall. He magnified the image until the pixels blurred and it looked like a door. A door bolted into stone. The possibility chilled him, but the shocking part comes next. When the photograph was shown to former engineers who had worked in the area decades earlier, one muttered something that froze the room. There were rumors of a Cold War shelter, never on maps. They said it was carved into the mountain in the 50s, a place to hide people if the unthinkable happened. He paused, shaking his head. But if those kids went down there, the implication hung in the air. Teams searched for entrances, probing hillsides, collapsing into brush and stone. Dogs barked at cracks in the earth where cool air seeped upward. But no open door was ever found. Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet. The detective returned to the photographs late one night, pinning them to his board. Strings connected faces to initials, initials to the cabin to the tunnel. He stared at the blurred shot of the bus descending, shadows closing in, students pale with terror. He whispered, "Someone built that place, and someone used it." But the shocking part comes next, because weeks later a second camera appeared. This time it wasn't found by hikers. It was mailed directly to the sheriff's office in a plain brown envelope. No return address, no fingerprints. Inside was a rusted disposable camera identical to the first. When the film was developed, investigators nearly collapsed. The images were darker, blurred, but unmistakable. Students huddled in what looked like a chamber underground. Walls of stone behind them. Some cried, others stared blankly. In the background, faintly, a metal door loomed. One frame showed it slightly open, light spilling through. The last frame was nothing but black. Still, the real story hadn't even begun, because tests on the film revealed something impossible. The material wasn't degraded like 30-year-old film should be. It was fresh, developed as if the photographs had been taken only weeks earlier. But the shocking part comes next. The families were shown the new photos, and one father, tears streaming down his face, swore he recognized his son's sneakers, shoes never sold after 1988. A mother gasped that the handwriting on a wall behind the children was her daughter's. It was too specific, too personal to fake. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some believed the students had been alive for years, held somewhere deep underground. Others whispered darker theories, that time itself bent inside those tunnels, trapping them in ways no one could understand. The chapter closes with the detective holding both sets of photographs, whispering to himself. 2 cameras, 2 stories, but one truth. His voice trembles as he asks the question no one wants answered. If someone mailed this film now, does that mean the 12 are still waiting? And you're left asking, could they still be alive somewhere beneath the mountain, or has someone kept their memory alive for reasons no one dares to speak aloud? You picture the detective staring at the second set of photographs, the fluorescent light buzzing faintly above his desk. The images are laid out in sequence, edges curling, the students' faces frozen in fear. He can't reconcile what the lab has told him, that the film is new, developed only weeks ago, with what his eyes are seeing. Children who should now be middle-aged adults, still 12, still trapped in a moment from 1988. He runs his hands over the prints, whispering their names as though saying them aloud could summon answers. But no answers come, only the echo of silence. But wait, the shocking part comes next. The FBI steps in now, pressure mounting from families and press. Agents pore over the photos, searching for details others missed. One notices graffiti scratched into the stone walls behind the children. Numbers, coordinates. When mapped, they point not to the known forest but to a valley 15 miles deeper, an area marked as private land since the 1950s. The detective and federal agents trek into the valley, boots sinking into moss, brush tearing at their arms. The land is scarred by forgotten industry, rusted machinery, collapsed shafts, skeletal remains of mining towers. At the valley's edge they find a sealed tunnel mouth, welded steel covering stone. The seams are thick with rust, but faint drafts of cold air seep through. Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet. Engineers bring torches, cutting through steel. Sparks rain, echoing into the mountain. When the metal plate finally crashes to the ground, a gust of air bursts out, stale, damp, carrying a faint chemical tang. Flashlights pierce the dark, illuminating stone walls that stretch inward, smooth and unnatural. They step inside. The tunnel slopes downward, echoing with their footfalls. Every few yards, metal supports brace the walls, stamped with dates from the 1950s. It was built deliberately, reinforced, not the crude work of miners but something designed to last. But the shocking part comes next. Half a mile in, the team discovers a door. Heavy riveted, its frame bolted into stone, the same door faintly captured in the second camera's photographs. They push it open, hinges screaming, the sound ricocheting like a scream. Inside is a chamber. The walls are bare, stone dripping with condensation. In the center sit 12 metal chairs, bolted to the floor in a circle. Straps dangle from their arms. Around the room, scratches cover the walls, names, dates, desperate messages. Please let us go. We hear them at night. Don't open the second door. Still, the real story hadn't even begun, because on the floor, beneath layers of dust, lies another camera. Identical to the first 2. When developed, the photographs showed the students again, seated in those very chairs, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. One boy holds a piece of cardboard with a date scrawled across it, July 1988. Another photo shows the same children, the same room, but the cardboard date now reads August. Another reads September. The sequence continues month after month until abruptly it ends. The detective stares at the prints, bile rising in his throat. They were kept here. For how long? And why did the photographs stop? But the shocking part comes next. Because when the film is tested, the dates on its emulsion confirm something horrifying. It wasn't developed until recently. Somehow rolls of film left in this chamber survived untouched for decades, until someone or something finished their story. The families are shown the chamber next. Parents stand inside the circle of chairs, running their hands along straps, pressing fingers against scratched names. Some collapse, others scream. One mother traces her daughter's handwriting on the wall, whispering, "I told you she was still here." Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet, because deeper in the tunnel lies another chamber. This one larger, lined with lockers like those found in schools. Many are rusted shut, but a few gape open. Inside are objects: shoes, backpacks, lunchboxes. One holds a jacket embroidered with a name still legible, belonging to one of the 12. The detective lifts it gently, the fabric stiff with time. He imagines the boy who wore it laughing on the bus, never knowing he'd leave his last trace here. But the shocking part comes next. The far wall of the locker room conceals yet another door. Smaller, narrower, bolted shut from the outside. Scratches claw its surface as though hands beat against it. When forced open, the stench is overwhelming. Inside is a narrow cell, empty, save for bones scattered on the floor, fragments too decayed to identify. A small ring lies among them, initials etched faintly. One father recognizes it instantly as his daughter's. The chamber erupts in grief. Some insist the bones prove death. Others refuse, clinging to hope, pointing to the photographs that suggest survival. Still, the real story hadn't even begun, because as the detective leaves the chamber, something catches his eye. A faint glow pulsing from a crack in the wall. He presses closer. The crack is narrow, but it runs deep, and behind it the air seems alive, vibrating faintly. He shines his flashlight, but the beam is swallowed instantly. No reflection, no stone, only blackness that feels like it's breathing. That night, back in his office, he pins the new photographs beside the old. His corkboard is a graveyard now. Faces frozen in terror, messages carved in stone, objects left behind. He stares at the sequence of images showing the months passing, the children seated, aging not at all. He whispers, "How could they last this long?" But the shocking part comes next, because days later another envelope arrives at the sheriff's office. Inside is a single photograph. It shows the 12 children seated in the chamber just as before. But this time the cardboard sign reads a new date, current year. The children look the same, unaged, unchanged, still 12. Still waiting. The detective drops the photo, his blood running cold. He whispers, "This wasn't 30 years ago. This was now." The chapter closes with him standing at the mouth of the tunnel, staring into the black crack in the wall that seemed to breathe, knowing the students might still be alive, or something worse. And you're left asking, did the 12 survive unchanged for 3 decades, or has the mountain itself trapped them in a place where time refuses to move? You picture the detective holding that last photograph under the harsh glow of the desk lamp, the edges trembling in his hands. 12 faces stare back at him, pale, unchanged, frozen in the same terrified silence that had haunted the original images from 1988. But this photo bears a date scrawled on cardboard, today's date, in handwriting unmistakably fresh. The implication claws at his mind. Either the children never aged, or someone has been recreating this nightmare for 30 years. His chest tightens as he pins the new photo to the board. Threads of string connect it to the others, a spiderweb of grief and obsession. He whispers the names again, a ritual that feels both prayer and curse. But wait, the shocking part comes next. The FBI escalates their involvement. Teams sweep the tunnels again, bringing heavier equipment this time. Geologists drill into stone. Engineers map seismic activity. Radar scans trace hollow spaces deep underground. The mountain seems to breathe beneath them, pockets of emptiness shifting as though alive. One agent mutters that the data looks wrong, impossible, like corridors that rearrange themselves. The detective leads them back to the chamber of chairs. Evidence markers dot the floor now. Forensic lights sweep across scratched words on the walls. Photographs are taken of every strap, every bolt. Yet even under sterile examination, the room feels wrong. Too heavy. Too silent. Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet. Because when one agent reviews footage taken inside the chamber, he notices something chilling. In the background of several frames, faint reflections shimmer in the wet stone. Faces. Dozens of them. Not just the 12, but others. Adults. Strangers. Faces pressed against invisible glass, mouths open in silent screams. When the footage is replayed, the reflections are gone. The team dismisses it as artifact distortion, but the detective knows better. But the shocking part comes next. One night, alone in the tunnel, he sets up his own camera, leaving it to record in the dark. When he plays it back, the audio makes his skin crawl. Beneath the hiss of static, whispers flow, layered voices calling names, pleading, begging. And then, a clear sentence. Don't let them open the second door. He rushes back to the chamber, heart hammering, searching for any sign of another door. His flashlight sweeps the walls until it catches something. An outline almost invisible. A seam where stone doesn't quite meet. He presses his hand to it. Cold air seeps through. Still, the real story hadn't even begun. Engineers confirm it. Behind the wall lies another chamber, sealed tight. The team debates opening it. Some argue it's too dangerous, that the structure might collapse. Others whisper about the message from the recordings. The detective insists they can't turn back now. The wall is broken open with drills and hammers. Dust chokes the air, stones crashing to the floor. Behind it, another door emerges. This one heavier, metallic, its surface etched with scratches so deep they cut into steel. The scratches form words, desperate and jagged. Keep closed. The agents hesitate. The detective steps forward, hand trembling, and forces the wheel lock. The door groans, metal grinding. A blast of icy air bursts out, reeking of chemicals and rot. Flashlights pierce the chamber within. But the shocking part comes next. Inside are more chairs, dozens arranged in rows like a classroom. Each has straps, some broken, some still locked. On the floor are bones, scattered and brittle, but not 12, many more. Piles of belongings litter the corners. Watches, wallets, purses. All decades old. The chamber reeks of abandonment, yet something feels unfinished. And then they see it. On the far wall hangs a mirror, cracked and fogged. Unlike the damp stone around it, the glass gleams faintly, reflecting not just their faces, but more. Behind their reflections, shadows move. Children, dozens of them, standing, watching. Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet. Because when one agent lifts his flashlight to the mirror, the beam bends, refracting oddly. The reflection shows the detective standing in the center of the room, but in the glass he isn't alone. The 12 students stand beside him, their eyes hollow, their mouths open as though mid-scream. He stumbles back, heart hammering. The reflection lingers even when he turns his head. He whispers their names, and for an instant their lips move in unison. Then the glass fogs and they vanish. But the shocking part comes next. The agents cover the mirror, logging it as evidence, but the detective can't look away. He feels the children's eyes on him even with the cloth draped. That night he dreams of them calling his name, reaching from behind glass, their palms pressed against invisible walls. Days later, another envelope arrives. No camera this time, just a single Polaroid. It shows the 12 students standing in the chamber of chairs, today's newspaper taped to the wall behind them. Proof that the photo was taken recently. Proof that someone is still there, still watching. The families collapse under the weight of it. Some scream at officials to rescue their children, insisting they are alive. Others beg for the nightmare to end, convinced the photos are cruel forgeries. The detective stares at the Polaroid until his vision blurs, whispering, "Who's taking these pictures?" Still, the real story hadn't even begun. He returns to the chamber with the mirror, alone this time. He pulls away the cloth and forces himself to stare. His own reflection looks back, pale, hollow-eyed. Then slowly shapes gather behind him, first the 12, then others, dozens, their faces pressed against glass. One girl leans closer, her lips forming words, "Help us." He touches the glass. It's warm, pulsing. He feels the faint pressure of hands pushing from the other side. For a heartbeat, he swears the mirror bends inward as though it might break. But the shocking part comes next. The hum begins again, low and vibrating, the sound that haunted the first chamber. Dust rains from the ceiling. The mirror trembles in its frame. His flashlight flickers, plunging him into darkness. When it steadies, his reflection is gone. Only the 12 remain, staring, silent, eyes wide. He stumbles back, choking on fear, and flees the chamber. Behind him, the hum grows louder, echoing through the tunnels until it feels like the mountain itself is alive. That night, he pins the Polaroid to his board, strings connecting it to the others. His office feels colder, mirrors reflecting shapes that shouldn't be there. He whispers to himself, "They're not gone. They're not even dead. They're waiting." The chapter closes with him staring at his own reflection in the window, realizing 12 pale faces stare back with him. And you're left asking, are the children trapped behind the mirrors alive but unreachable? Or has something in the mountain learned how to wear their faces forever? You picture the detective now, a man hollowed out by obsession, surrounded by walls covered in photographs, maps, and strings that seem to form a labyrinth of their own. The Polaroid with the fresh date stares at him from the center, mocking him with its impossible reality. 12 children who should be middle-aged, still 12, still frozen, still reaching from behind glass. He whispers their names every night, as if calling them back might bridge the gap between worlds. But wait, the shocking part comes next. The FBI debates shutting the tunnels down entirely. Too dangerous, they say, too unstable. But the detective fights them, arguing that closing it will bury the truth forever. Families gather outside the station, holding candles, chanting names, refusing to let the case die again. Their voices rise through the night, a chorus of grief that rattles even hardened agents. Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet, because in the days that follow, more strange evidence appears. A janitor at the old high school uncovers a forgotten locker during renovations. Inside are notebooks belonging to the missing students. The pages are filled with sketches, maps of tunnels, drawings of chairs, crude images of faces behind mirrors. The handwriting matches samples from the 1980s. Yet one page in fresh ink bears a date from last week. The detective's hands shake as he flips through the pages. He whispers, "They're still writing." But the shocking part comes next. A third envelope arrives at the sheriff's office. This one contains not a photograph but an audio cassette. When played, it crackles with static, then faint voices emerge. Children laughing, a song, then screaming. Cut short by the grinding hum of machinery. Finally, a single sentence whispered in unison. "We're still waiting." The audio sends shockwaves through the families. Some collapse, convinced their children are alive. Others cover their ears, unwilling to believe. The detective listens on repeat, memorizing every sound, every breath. He swears one of the voices calls his name. Still, the real story hadn't even begun. Determined, he returns to the tunnel with a small team. They descend past the first chamber of chairs, past the lockers, past the mirror. At the far end, they find another sealed door, hidden behind collapsed stone. It takes hours to clear, shovels clanging, dust choking their lungs. When it finally opens, the stench of chemicals burns their throats. Inside is a laboratory. Rusting equipment lines the walls, monitors, wires, restraints. Tables littered with notebooks filled with formulas, dates, and strange symbols. One log, dated 1988, lists subjects 12. The pages describe extended containment, resistance to aging, mirror interface experiments. The words blur in the detective's vision, bile rising. These children weren't just lost. They were used, but the shocking part comes next. On one table lies a jar, sealed, filled with murky fluid. Inside floats a disposable camera identical to the others. The detective's hands tremble as he pulls it out. When developed, the photos show the children again. This time, they are in the lab itself. Wires attached, eyes hollow, faces illuminated by harsh fluorescent light. The last image shows them staring directly into the lens, their mouths open in a silent scream. The detective staggers back, gasping. He whispers, "Who took these pictures?" Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet, because when the photos are tested once again, the film is new, fresh, developed recently. The implication is clear. Someone is still down there documenting the children as if the experiments never stopped. The FBI tightens security, posting guards at the tunnel entrance. But the detective sneaks back alone, unable to let it go. He wanders the chambers in darkness, flashlight beam trembling. The mirror looms before him, uncovered now, its surface rippling faintly like water. His reflection stares back, but something feels wrong. His movements lag. His eyes don't blink when they should, and then he sees them. The 12 gather behind his reflection, their hands pressed to the glass, their faces pale. One boy mouths the words, "Maul, pull us through." The detective presses his hand against the mirror. For a heartbeat, he feels warmth, pressure, fingers gripping his own. But the shocking part comes next. The hum erupts again, shaking the chamber. The mirror bends inward, glass rippling. His reflection shatters, replaced entirely by the 12 children. They scream in unison, their voices echoing through the tunnel. He stumbles back, flashlight flickering, ears ringing. When the light steadies, the mirror is smooth again. Only his reflection remains. He flees the tunnel, collapsing in the forest above, gasping for air. But even in daylight, he feels their eyes on him, their voices in his ears. He whispers, "You're not gone. You're trapped." Still, the real story hadn't even begun, because days later the families receive letters. Each envelope contains a drawing, crude and childlike, signed with the names of their missing children. The paper is fresh, the ink smudged. The drawings depict tunnels, mirrors, chairs. One shows a figure reaching through glass, pulling another back. The detective stares at the drawings, convinced they're messages. Pleas for help, proof the 12 are still alive, or at least still aware. But the shocking part comes next. That night, he dreams of the children again. This time, they're not screaming. They're silent, standing in a line, holding hands. Behind them looms the mirror, glowing faintly. They step closer, pressing their palms against it. One whispers, "If you open it, we'll come back." He wakes, drenched in sweat, unsure if it was just a dream, or something more. The chapter closes with him standing before the tunnel entrance at dawn, clutching the Polaroid, the cassette, the notebook pages. His voice is hoarse as he whispers, "If I open it, will you come back? Or will something else come through instead?" And you're left asking, are the children still waiting behind the mirror to be freed? Or has the mountain created something new that only wears their faces? You picture the detective now as a man teetering on the edge, caught between reason and obsession. His board is no longer just evidence, it is a shrine to the 12. Polaroids, sketches, scraps of clothing, cassette tapes, each pinned and connected by red string. To anyone else it looks like madness. To him it is the only map that matters, and at the center of it all the mirror. The place where the children wait, the place where the truth hides. He spends hours staring into every mirror in his home, waiting for shadows to move. Some nights they do, a handprint on the glass, a faint whisper, a reflection that lingers a second too long. He tells himself it isn't madness. He tells himself it's proof. But wait, the shocking part comes next. The FBI tries to shut him out now. Officially the tunnels are sealed, evidence logged, case pending review. But he knows the truth. They are covering something. Too many photographs, too many recordings, too many impossible details. The families protest, chaining themselves outside the courthouse, holding up pictures of their children as if to remind the world they are more than names. Reporters swarm. The case becomes national again. Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet, because in the middle of the chaos another package arrives. This time, delivered not to the sheriff's office but to the detective's own apartment. Inside, a shard of glass wrapped in cloth. When he lifts it, his own reflection doesn't stare back. Instead, 12 pale faces crowd the surface, their eyes wide, their lips moving silently. He drops it, heart hammering as the glass pulses faintly on the floor. He whispers, "They're here." But the shocking part comes next. That night, he dreams again. The 12 stand in a circle holding hands, their faces calm now, no longer screaming. One girl steps forward, her voice clear for the first time. "You must open the other door." He wakes, gasping. Drenched in sweat, the words echoing in his ears. The next morning, he returns to the tunnels. He sneaks past guards, slipping into the dark alone. His flashlight beam cuts across damp stone, past the chamber of chairs, past the locker room, past the lab. Finally, he reaches the mirror again. It looms in silence, its surface fogged. He whispers their names, his voice trembling. For a moment, faint outlines appear, hands pressing from the other side. Still, the real story hadn't even begun. Because this time the mirror answers. A low hum rises, vibrating through the stone. The glass ripples like water. His reflection bends and warps until it disappears entirely. In its place stand the 12 children reaching toward him. One boy mouths, "The other door." He presses his hand against the glass. Warmth pulses back, and for an instant he feels fingers grip his own. But the shocking part comes next. The hum crescendos. The mirror cracks. A jagged line slices across the surface. He stumbles back, shielding his eyes as shards rain onto the floor. When he dares to look again, the mirror is whole once more. Only now his reflection is gone. The 12 stare back instead, their faces pale, their eyes burning with urgency. He flees, stumbling through the tunnels, lungs burning. When he emerges into daylight, he collapses, whispering, "They want me to open it." Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet, because days later, construction crews digging near the valley uncover another tunnel entrance, one not marked on any map. When cleared, it reveals a steel door identical to the one scratched with "Keep Closed." Etched into its surface are 12 names, the missing students. Beneath them, a final message: "This is the other door." The detective's blood runs cold. The families gather, screaming for it to be opened. The FBI hesitates, fearing collapse, contamination, or worse. But the detective knows he has no choice. This is what the children want. But the shocking part comes next. The door is forced open with torches. Beyond lies a narrow corridor lined with mirrors, each cracked, each fogged. As the team moves forward, their reflections distort, lag, multiply. Some mirrors show them as children. Others show them old, withered, skeletal. The detective grips his flashlight tighter, whispering names, searching for the 12. At the corridor's end lies another chamber. This one vast, circular, walls covered entirely in mirrors. In the center sits a single chair, bolted to the floor, straps dangling. The air vibrates with the hum, low and constant. The detective steps forward, heart pounding. In every mirror the 12 appear, pressing their hands to the glass. Still, the real story hadn't even begun. Because when he sits in the chair, strapping himself in, the mirrors shift. The 12 vanish. In their place, his own reflection multiplies, dozens, hundreds of him, each screaming silently. He thrashes, but the straps hold, the hum crescendos, shattering some mirrors, rippling others like water. And then, faintly, the children reappear, standing behind his countless reflections, their mouths moving in unison. "Take our place." He rips free of the straps, stumbling out of the chamber. His flashlight beam flickers wildly, catching glimpses of faces in every shard, every crack, every reflection. The tunnels shake. Dust rains. He runs until daylight blinds him, collapsing in the grass above, gasping, trembling. But the shocking part comes next. That night, back in his apartment, every mirror in his home fogs simultaneously. His reflection lags, and for the first time it smiles when he does not. The chapter closes with him whispering into the silence, "If I open the other door, will you come back, or will I be the one who never returns?" And you're left asking, do the children want to be rescued? Or are they begging him to join them forever in the place behind the glass? You picture the detective now, no longer able to separate his own life from the case. His reflection is no longer trustworthy. Every mirror he passes makes his skin crawl. Sometimes he catches a glimpse of the 12 behind him, their faces pale, their hands reaching. Other times it's just his own reflection, but delayed, distorted, smiling when he doesn't. He tapes over every mirror in his apartment, but at night he still hears them whispering through the glass. The FBI has all but abandoned the tunnels now. Officially, the site is marked as sealed. Too dangerous for further exploration. Unofficially, agents whisper that some of their own began seeing things, hearing voices, losing track of time. The investigation is quietly buried under paperwork, but the detective refuses to stop. But wait, the shocking part comes next. He studies the photographs again, especially the Polaroid with the current date. The 12 are there unchanged, still 12 years old. He notices something he missed before. In the corner of the image, faint but visible, is a symbol scratched into the wall. A spiral, jagged and crude, the same symbol found in the original ledger from the cabin. He realizes now it isn't random. It's a marker, a signature. Someone or something has been documenting this all along. Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet, because when he overlays maps of the tunnels with the symbols marked on photographs and notebooks, a pattern emerges. The spirals form a circle, a perfect loop buried beneath the mountain, with the mirror chamber at its center. The implication makes his blood run cold. The tunnels weren't random. They were designed. The families beg him to stop. Some scream at him in grief, saying he's torturing them with false hope. Others cling to him desperately, believing he is the only one still fighting. He promises them answers, even if it destroys him. But the shocking part comes next. Another package arrives. Hand-delivered this time, left outside his apartment door. Inside is a videotape, unmarked. When played, the footage flickers with static, then clears to reveal the chamber of mirrors. The camera pans slowly, and there they are, the 12 children seated in the circle of chairs staring silently. The footage lingers on each face, then zooms in on a girl who leans forward, her lips forming words. He's one of us now. The tape cuts to black. The detective feels the blood drain from his face. He replays the footage again and again, convinced he sees his own reflection in the glass behind them. Still, the real story hadn't even begun. Driven, he breaks back into the tunnels. His flashlight beam sweeps across damp stone, past the laboratory, past the locker room, back to the mirror chamber. The hum greets him instantly, vibrating through his chest. He whispers their names, each syllable a plea. For a moment, faint outlines appear behind the glass. One boy raises his hand, palm pressed against the surface. The detective mirrors it. Warmth pulses back, and then the mirror ripples. But the shocking part comes next. The surface bends inward, and the detective feels himself pulled. His partner, one of the few who still believes in him, grabs his arm, yanking him back. For a heartbeat, his body stretches toward the glass as though gravity itself has reversed. Then suddenly the pull stops. The mirror stills, smooth once more. His partner screams at him to leave, but he can't. He knows the 12 are waiting. Still, the truth hadn't surfaced yet, because when they retreat, they notice something different. Their watches are wrong. Hours have passed in what felt like minutes. Outside, the world is darker, the air colder. Time itself slips in the tunnels, bending around the mirrors. The detective realizes what this means. The 12 may not have aged because inside the mirror, time does not move as it should. He becomes convinced now. They aren't dead. They aren't even gone. They're suspended, waiting. But the shocking part comes next. That night, he receives another letter. Inside is a single Polaroid of himself, taken from behind as he stood before the mirror only hours earlier. He knows no one else had a camera. He knows he didn't take it. The message on the back reads, "Choose." Sleep abandons him entirely. He stares at the photo until dawn, the word echoing in his skull. Choose what? His life, theirs? The boundary between? Still, the real story hadn't even begun. The next day he returns to the families, laying out every piece of evidence: the cameras, the photographs, the tapes, the notebooks, the shards of glass. He tells them everything: the mirrors, the hum, the other door. Some collapse in grief. Others cling to hope. But all of them ask the same question: can you bring them back? He doesn't answer. He can't. But the shocking part comes next. The detective stands once more before the mirror chamber, alone this time. The glass fog shapes pressing from behind. He whispers, "I'll open it." The 12 faces press closer, their eyes wide, their mouths moving in unison. Then come. The hum roars. The glass ripples. For the first time, a crack splinters across the surface, wide enough to glimpse what lies beyond. Not just the children, but endless corridors. Reflections upon reflections, a world of glass stretching into infinity. He feels the pull again, stronger, hungrier. His hands tremble as he grips the frame. The chapter closes with him leaning closer, whispering, "If I cross, will you come back? Or will I be lost with you forever?" And you're left asking, is the detective about to rescue the 12 at last, or is he stepping into a place that has already claimed them, and countless others, for eternity? You picture the detective standing at the mouth of the mirror chamber, with the quiet certainty of someone who has already crossed a line. The tunnels breathe around him. Stone sweating, cables humming somewhere he can't see, air moving in slow pulses like the chest of a sleeping animal. He wipes dust from his palms, takes one step forward, then another, until the circular room swallows him whole, and the wall of glass stares back with 1,000 cold eyes. Your heart keeps time with the low vibration in the floor. You know what he's here to do, and you wonder, if you were in his place, how far you'd go to pull 12 children out of a place that refuses to move. He speaks their names in a whisper that barely belongs to him. Each syllable hits the glass and returns thinner, like water tossed into water. At first there is only his reflection, tired, cut, hollow. But then the surface fogs as if drawn by the breath of unseen lungs. Shapes bud out of shadow, growing more definite until 12 faces press close from the other side. They are the same as they were in 1988. Haircuts frozen in another decade. Collars crooked by hands long since stilled. Eyes bright with a fear that has not dimmed. You can almost feel their palms when they lift them to the glass. And you feel your own hand rising in answer. But wait, the shocking part comes next. The hum widens into a tone so deep it rattles the fillings in his teeth. The mirrors flex, not in illusion, but in physics, bowing inward like a lake disturbed by a wind you cannot feel. The detective braces against the frame. He thinks of the Polaroid stamped with a date that should have made the children middle-aged, and how it refused to bend. He thinks of the cassette whispering, "We're still waiting." He thinks of the families outside the courthouse clutching photographs until the edges frayed, of the porch lights that never went off. He thinks of the word on the back of the last photograph, "Choose." He chooses. His fingers press to the glass. Warmth pulses back. Not warmth like sun on skin, but a kind of living current that gathers and climbs, making his hand tingle to the bone. He presses harder. The surface thins, then parts. For an instant, the membrane holds him at the wrist, clinging like syrup, and then the mirror swallows his arm to the elbow. It should hurt. It doesn't. It feels like being remembered. Longer, textured sentences stretch out as the chamber changes around him, the room's acoustics drifting off key. The chairs bolted to the floor are no longer empty at the edges of his vision. They are occupied by reflections of chairs that are occupied by reflections of children. Layers deep. Always 12. Always the same circle repeating until it becomes a pattern you could mistake for fate. He wants to drag his hand back, but he doesn't. He wants to pull them forward, but he can't find leverage in a place that has no friction. You can feel it. If you lean too far into certain mysteries, they lean back. And in that moment, everything changes. Fingers lace through his from the other side. Small, desperate, real. A girl you know only by a name that has become a prayer meets his eye and mouths something simple he can't hear. Please. Another hand joins. Then another. The tug is cautious at first, then frantic. He pulls, the glass bows, cracks feather outward in a slow white bloom. The hum spikes, pitching up until it's almost a scream. Behind the 12, he sees corridors of reflected corridors, dozens, hundreds, folding into each other like the bellows of an accordion. The geometry makes no sense. The scale makes less. But he keeps pulling because you would too, because the only thing that makes sense is a child trying to come home. But the glass is not a door. It is a gate. And gates open both ways. A shadow moves behind the children, not a person so much as an absence where a person should be. A curvature of light around a vacancy. It touches one boy's shoulder and his face goes still. Not calm, not resigned, just emptied. The boy's fingers slacken in the detective's grip. Panic flares hot and bright. The detective yanks harder. The mirror answers with a sound like ice breaking on a lake at midnight. A shard leaps free and skitters across the floor at his feet, clinking to a stop. In it, for a heartbeat, he thinks he sees the boy's eye staring back. Then the shard dulls, reflecting only the busted ceiling. Still, the truth hasn't surfaced yet, because something else pushes at the membrane from the far side. A pressure without shape. A tide that understands blood and doors and names. The children flinch and crowd closer to the detective's arm, as if his bones are a rope thrown across. He tries to widen the tear with his free hand, but the mirror resists, elastic and hungry. The straps on the chair in the chamber twitch as if moved by hands not in the room. The hum sinks low again, subsonic. The frequency of engines miles away and thunder underground. You imagine the tunnel behind him, stacked with lockers that hold shoes laced by parents who taught their kids to double knot. Notebooks full of sketches of chairs. A lab with notebooks that used words you never apply to human beings. Subjects, interface, containment. You imagine time puddling in the low places like cold air. You imagine the town above not knowing the earth below it rearranges rooms while they sleep. But the shocking part comes. Next, a mount of footsteps clatters down the corridor. His partner's voice slashing through the hum. Let go. The detective doesn't. The partner grabs his shoulders from behind, bracing, adding leverage. One pull, the partner says, voice shredded by fear. And whatever happens, we run. They count the way people count when they lift a car off a pinned human being, like numbers can hold up the sky. 1, 2, 3. They pull. The membrane gives. A wrist emerges, then a forearm slick with cold that isn't wet. A girl's sleeve, the same color as in the long-ago yearbook, slips into air that smells like stone and battery acid. Her elbow catches on the frame and the pain of it makes her reel. The partner hooks under her arm and wrenches. The glass screams in a voice made of friction. Her shoulder clears. The detective shifts his grip to her waist. For a fractional second you believe you are watching a rescue, and then the mirror takes her back. Not all of her. No, it is crueler than that. The glass snaps like the edge of a wave and clamps over her, sealing at the ribs. Her face, so close, so alive, whips sideways as if looking for a door that is not a picture. Her mouth shapes a single word again. Please. The detective tries to pull anyway, adds pain to a system designed to extract it. The partner swears and shoves his shoulder into the frame. The chamber goes too bright. The hum goes too soft. And the girl dissolves into the mirror with the intimacy of breath on breath, leaving nothing in their hands but the memory of weight. You hear the question moving through your own head. If the mountain takes what you love piece by piece, how do you keep yourself whole? They stagger backward, both men gasping, palms shredded, blood threading across floor dust like red string on a map. The mirror settles back into something solid, unbroken. Harmless if you do not believe your eyes. On its surface, for a moment, the 12 look older. Not in their faces, which remain perfectly 12, but in their posture, as if carrying news from a place where news is useless. They back away into corridors that double back into themselves, and then they are thin, then thinner, then gone. Still, the real story hasn't even begun, because you can't pull something this old and this deep without something else taking hold. Back up in the air that pretends to be free, the detective's mirrors begin to misbehave. Not just the bathroom, not just the hallway. Screens, windows at night, the gloss on a puddle. Each shows edges out of sync. The partner catches his own reflection smiling in a window when his mouth is set, and understands that whatever looks through reflects back. He rips the tape off a photo he carries in his wallet of his kid on a first bike ride, and the laminate shines wrong. A sheen like oil on water. The families, those whose hope lives on a long fuse, gather again at the mouth of the first tunnel. Candles gutter in the draft. Someone leaves sandwiches no one eats. A mother who has not said her daughter's name in public for 20 years says it aloud twice and swallows after each, as if bracing for the taste of it. The sheriff gives a speech with all the appropriate verbs, then folds into himself when the cameras turn away. You stand with them in your head because it is easier than standing in silence somewhere else. But wait, the shocking part comes next. Another package arrives. Not an envelope. A crate bolted. When the agents pry it open, they find 12 backpacks inside. Clean, unfaded. Packed the way they were on the morning of the trip. Peanut butter sandwiches. Rolled socks, a disposable camera with my pics scrawled in marker. The kind of note a parent tucks inside. Proud of you, see you at dinner. The dates on the milk cartons and the lunch boxes are contemporary. No mold, no smell of 30 years. The weight of the present tense makes people cry who thought they were done doing that. A recorder hidden at the back of the mirror chamber captures a short piece of audio in the hours no one is there. Feet that do not exist cross stone. A chair's strap creaks. A child's voice asks very politely, "May we go home now?" Then silence again. The kind that makes you doubt you heard anything at all. The detective and his partner argue. "Go back in," the detective says. "Burn it down," the partner says. Neither option aligns with physics or ethics or hope. Neither option aligns with sleep. They go back anyway. When they descend, the tunnels are warmer. The hum rides inside the skull instead of through the bones. In the locker room, every metal door stands open as if called to attention. Inside, the contents are no longer from 1988, but from now. Hoodies with bands that did not exist then. Sneakers with soles too clean to have known a single mile of dirt. In the laboratory, notebooks that used to say interface and containment now contain only one sentence written over and over. It knows our names. And in the chair room, the straps are unbuckled. Sometimes the only way out of a maze is through a door that doesn't like you. He knows this. You do too. So he does the thing no one should do twice. He puts both hands on the mirror and says the names again. Not like a list this time, but like an invitation to dinner. The partner sets his shoulder and waits for the pull. The glass cools under their palms. The faces arrive nearer than before, like fish in shallow water. The membrane thins to the point you could breathe it and not die. Then the chamber in the mirror brightens as if someone has turned on a long hallway of lights. You see them, no, you feel them. 12 small hands, 12 wrists, 12 pulses. The detective closes his eyes and leans. He remembers his own first day of school. The teacher writing his name in neat letters on a tag that made him legible to strangers. He thinks, if a name is a door, then I will leave mine open. He says it aloud. First name, middle, last. He says his partners. He says the towns. He says the mountain because he is tired of pretending rock is not old, not alive. He says please. He says now, and the mirror opens. Not all the way. Not like a welcome. But enough. Enough to borrow. Enough to take. Hands spill through, little ones, yes. But also hands you do not expect. A miner's with a scar across the thumb. A woman's with a ring you saw in a box of bone shards. A boy's with a wristwatch that stopped the day his mother stopped sleeping. They touch air and recoil like animals unused to weather. The partner shouts something that is not words. The detective makes himself into a rope again. Because that is his only trick left. They pull something into the room. They pull a backpack. It is blue and you Know whose it was before the detective reads the name stitched inside on a strip of cloth a parent ironed onto the lining. Inside, a sandwich as fresh as if made minutes ago, a camera, a folded bit of paper that says in a hand that has learned to write between one summer morning and forever, "If you can read this, we are not gone." Do not let it take your face. Still, the real story hasn't even begun, because on the far side of the glass, where light cannot decide whether it is physics or memory, the 12 step back into formation, shoulder to shoulder, a line drawn by a teacher with a good voice. They open their mouths and you hear nothing, but the detective hears something because he nods once like a man agreeing to something that costs too much. He lets go of the glass. The membrane cinches shut. The chamber breathes out. A strap on the bolted chair lifts an inch, then falls. He leaves the backpack with the families. He keeps the note. He keeps the shard of mirror from the first attempt, the one that sometimes shows an eye, sometimes only light. He keeps himself moving because stationary things sink in soft ground. Above ground, presses spin and anchor women blink and use phrases like stunning development and renewed hope. People comment from living rooms at midnight. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you wonder if that note was written by a child in a place with no sunrise. Maybe you wonder what you would have written to your parent if time were a circle and glass were water. The sheriff pads the truth with careful words. The FBI recruits new verbs. The families meet in the gym the way they did 30 summers ago, and the janitor sets out more folding chairs than there are people because he has learned to respect absences. And the detective watches his own reflection like a hawk watches a field. He keeps lights on. He keeps the mirror covered with towels he never uses. He keeps a piece of tape across the top of his bathroom glass and checks it each morning to see if it has curled at the edges of its own accord. He talks to the 12 under his breath while making coffee. One night, months after the last descent, the glass in his apartment fogs and stays fogged. He wipes it clear with the heel of his hand. It fogs again, but from the other side. When it clears, a face looks back that is not his. It is close enough to fool anyone who doesn't know him. It is wrong enough to fool no one who does. It smiles, he does not. It raises a hand. His hand is at his side. He understands then that the choice he made never belonged only to him. He takes the note from his wallet and reads it again. Do not let it take your face. The words have the weight of a promise made cross-legged on a gym floor in 1988, and the weight of a promise made in a tunnel nobody drew on any map. He tapes the note to the mirror. He sits in a chair, he waits, because existence sometimes is waiting in a room where a door appears when it wants to, and never when you do. Outside, the mountain is just a mountain again, a ridgeline, a weather pattern, a place where crows float like punctuation. Inside, the chambers remember what they are. Circles and chairs and doors that open when names are said properly. Inside the glass, the 12 stand in a hallway that could be any hallway. And the camera inside the blue backpack holds exposures it was not designed to hold. You listen with the part of you that still believes in porch lights. You look at your own screens and windows and wonder if any reflection has ever been your own. You think about tunnels that were dug to hide people and became machines that keep them. You think about notes sent through a place that refuses to kill or age but will happily strip a person of their outline. The detective will go back. He knows it. And you know it, because some doors resent being closed and some promises resent being broken. He will take no rope heavy enough to matter. He will take names. He will take the sound of 12 voices saying, "Help us," so faintly you only recognize it when it stops. He will take his own face and try to keep it. He will walk under the earth where rooms change shape when nobody is inside them. He will put his hand to the glass and wait for the temperature to change. He will count to 3 with a partner whose reflection sometimes smiles on its own. He will either become a story that parents tell their children about how a good man got too near the thing that eats names, or he will become a story about a door that opened because it was asked nicely. At last, the mountain will keep its breath slow. The gym will keep 12 chairs empty. The porch lights will stay on and the cameras will keep the images they were not built to keep. So what if the last page is really a window? What do you see? The case was never closed. The bus was never found. The 12 were seen and not seen, touched and not touched, real and more real than anyone could stand. The chamber exists. The mirror exists. The note says, do not let it take your face. The rest is your theory, your fear, your town. Do you believe a Cold War shelter grew teeth and learned the taste of names? Or that time misfired underground and caught 12 children in its gears? Do you think the mountain is a machine or a mouth or a mirror that shows you exactly what you cannot return? Tell us what you believe. Some stories were never meant to stay buried. Don't let them vanish. Keep them alive with us.